This video is about the 3 ways to graph a quadratic. A quadratic, remember, is one of these rules for y that mentions an x squared and nothing strange after that. So no square root of x's, nothing where algebra is underneath the fraction line, just regular expression where the highest power of x is a 2. There's 3 ways to graph one of those. One is with a big long wide table of values with at least a couple of negative numbers, and then you work out what each of these is by substituting them in turn for x. Remember, if you're typing it or you're writing it out carefully, you need snug brackets whenever something with 2 characters replaces something with 1 character inside a squared. So that me there is working out this entry here. Negative 2 squared is 4. 2 times negative 2 is negative 4. So those together are 0. Add 1 and you get 1. Anyway, you do all them and you basically end up connecting the dots. So negative 2 across 1 up, and it'll be something like this. Okay, so that's the first way. That's the most time-consuming way. Second way is what's called a quick table. Quick table has just 2 columns, and in one of the columns you write a 0 where x is, and in the other column you write a 0 where y is. So let's graph this one. Now, write a 0 where x is. That comes out really simple because handling 0 is very, very easy, one of the easiest things in maths. So 0 squared is 0. 2 times 0 is 0, 0 minus 0 is 0, so that means that goes there. Now, if y is 0, as it is in this column, we're going to write a 0 where y is. There used to be a y there, I placed it with a 0. Now, how do you get an answer out of that? Well, there's 3 ways to solve a quadratic. One way is to factorize it, another way is to complete the square, but for the purposes of this video, let's just imagine we pump that through the quadratic formula. So a is 1, b is negative 2, and c is 0. So the quadratic formula is normally this: negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. That formula tells you the solutions to these, and there will be solutions for x, which means they'll go in this box. But anyway, as I say, you just replace. So a is 1, c is 0, b is negative 2. See how b has 1 character but negative 2 has 2 characters, hence the snug brackets. b is negative 2, so we're going to get a double dash, one because there's a dash already there, the other dash comes from b being negative 2 rather than 2, and then finally 2 times 1 on the bottom because a is 1. Type that through a calculator, do it once with the plus, then do it again with the minus, and that'll give you 2 answers. Those 2 answers are x answers, and I think they are 0 and 2, so they go there. Now, how do you get a graph out of that? Okay, we'll just do your normal thing. Go 0 along, 0 up, then go 0 along, 0 up, now 2 along, 0 up. Now, there's 2 ways to get a quadratic parabola shape out of that, a bucket shape. You can either go like that or like that. Bucket up is for when the coefficient of x squared is positive. You can imagine these 2 p's here. So up is for positive coefficient of x squared. Now, in my example, it was this, wasn't it? So the coefficient of x squared is a hidden 1 there, so that's positive, so it's bucket up. If that had been negative 1, it would now be bucket down. So that's how to graph a quadratic using a quick table. Okay, and then finally we're going to graph a quadratic using a super quick table. Okay, a super quick table is super quick because it's literally only got one column. And you need to be super careful about what goes there. If you're going to be super quick, you need to pick the right number there. Now the right number to go there is what I call the blue part of the quadratic formula. When you do the quadratic formula on your graph, or on your algebra, sorry, so let's say it's for this one here. What's our b? -8. What's our a? 1. So the blue part becomes -8 over 2 times 1. -8 over 2 is -4. So that is what heads up the table, just that single column in the table. Now, what goes there? Just a good old-fashioned table of values. It's this. Again, see, 2 characters replacing 1 character needs snug brackets. So now we work it out. -4 times -4 is 16. 8 times -4 is -32. Plus 1. That plus that is -16. Plus 1 brings it up to -15. So that means that, remember, see, that's the y value that now goes in there. Now, this gives you the graph. If you remember that that thing that you've just created is the coordinates of the turning point. So we go 4 to the left and then 15 down. And now if we remember whether it's bucket up or bucket down, we'll be sorted. That's 1, it's +1, not -1, so it's bucket up. And there's the graph. So this coordinate is the coordinates of that turning point there. Okay, so there are 3 ways to graph a quadratic. The big long wide table of values, which you should also use if you're not sure what shape you'll get. The quick table, which tells you the intercepts, select there and there. And finally the super quick table, which has a number there and a number there, and that tells you the turning point, which could either be a maximum or it could be a minimum. Now, which of those is the best? Well, as I say, if you're not sure, just use a big long wide table of values. And use a big long wide table of values if you're not even sure that it will be a bucket like that one. I don't know what shape that would be, so I'd use a big long wide table of values so you've got lots of points to connect so that you can be sure. But if you're sure that it's a quadratic, you now have a choice. Now, it's important to realise that which one you choose depends upon what use you're going to put it to. So, if I was asked what's the minimum point of the parabola, I would want to know just how low this gets. So I want to know how low that is. Only one of the 2 methods tells you exactly what that point is, and that's the super quick table, because the super quick table tells you that point. If I was being asked to say what part of the graph is low and what part of the graph is high, so for example what part of the graph is below the x-axis and what part of the graph is above the x-axis, I wouldn't use the super quick table because that tells you that point there. What I would instead do is use the quick table because that tells you those 2 points. So if that was a 0 and that was a 3, and I was asked when is the graph low, I would just say between 0 and 3. So which of these you use depends totally, which of the 2 methods you use depends totally on the purpose that you have. If you're asked for the minimum point or the coordinates of the turning point, use a super quick table. If you're asked for when the graph is low or for when the graph is high, use a quick table. Now, by the way, sometimes you don't have a choice. Not all graphs actually touch the axes like this. So for example, this graph here I'll try and draw that with a quick table. Watch this. Okay, so if you put a 0 where x is, you get y equals 0 squared plus 1, which is 1. And if you put a 0 where y is, you try and do the square root of a negative and that doesn't work, so you get math error. So this simply fails. And the reason why it fails is that that graph just does not touch the x-axis. It never has a height of 0, which means y can never be 0. Remember, y is just a code name for how high something is. So what we instead do for this is use a super quick table. So, what's the blue part of the quadratic formula? Negative b over 2a. So what's our b? 0. What's our a? A hidden 1. What's negative 0? Same as 0. 2 times 1 is 2. What's 0 over 2? That's 0. So that goes there. You put a 0 where x is there. You get 0 squared, that's 0 plus 1 is 1. So you go 0 along, 1 up, and put a parabola on so that that's its turning point. Is it concave up or concave down? Sorry. Sorry. It's bucket up because the coefficient of x squared is 1, so that's the graph. And as I said, it doesn't come anywhere near touching the x-axis. So if you were asked, when is that graph high, just say, always. It's always high. It never goes below the x-axis. If they ask you, when is that graph low, just answer, never.